Now, English Heritage has asked members of the public to help stop a rise in illegal metal detecting at its ancient sites. The battlefield used in the Battle of Hastings in 1066 is among the locations, including medieval castles and Roman forts, which have been targeted by illegal detecting, known as nighthawking. Earlier I spoke to Wyn Scott from English Heritage, who says it's the damage to the archaeology that's particularly worrying.
Well, the effect of illegal detecting on our sites is more than just the loss of the artefacts. Obviously, they're important and they can be valuable. But what concerns me more is the actual damage they do to the very complicated archaeology that's buried in the ground. Normally it would cost archaeologists an enormous amount of labour and time and science and everything to surgically dissect an archaeological site to get the maximum amount of information out of it. A recent excavation that I've been managing in Cornwall is costing £250,000 for not a very big trench, but a 5-year project to analyse all that stuff. Well, a detectorist just comes along and digs a hole in 5 minutes and ruins all the stratigraphy, just digs down through all that sort of layer cake of archaeology and destroys all that data that is our only chance to find out about our history.
Are we seeing items that would have been underground taken then and lost to the criminal underworld then?
That's where it's going. I mean, there is some of it is certainly organised crime, and some of it is going through a series of fences, if you like, people who are illegally processing the results of crime, and so they're all implicated in the crime as well. And they are going underground. We never know what's come out of the sites at all. I mean, we just don't have a clue unless somebody reports it. So in some cases, the detectorists are arrested on site. Sometimes their stash is found, or sometimes a dealer with a conscience suspects that the detectorists who've come to him with or her with a stack of finds for sale suspect that they might have come from a protected site. So they report it to the police, and that certainly happened in recent times, which is good, but it's not happening enough.
Well, that was Wyn Scott from English Heritage, who's warning that illegal metal detectorists are plundering our past. Well, let's speak to Graham Rushton, whose business, Unearthed UK, is based in Dalton-in-Furness and organises digs, sells metal detectors and advises people on the law. Thanks for joining us, Graham. Your reaction that archaeology is being lost to illegal detectorists?
Well, I mean, thanks very much for having me again. This is the second time this week we've been on the BBC talking about detecting, and I had to step back a little bit when I heard and read on social media that these sites are being plundered up and down the UK. Now, my response to that is it's unfortunate that it's happening, but we've got to remember and put into context that 99.9% of all detectorists do the right thing. They record the finds, they do it in a professional, responsible manner, they don't break the law. It's just this tiny minority of individuals that spoil it for the rest of us. Detecting's been around a long time. People enjoy the pastime and the hobby of detecting. It helps with their mental health and their health and well-being. And like I said, it's a tiny minority of people that are letting the rest of us down. So, for example, if someone picks up a knife, it doesn't necessarily make them a chef. And it's that sort of thing. These are criminals that are using metal detectors. They're not detectorists. They're using metal detectors to plunder these sites at night. And it's a real unfortunate thing that we're getting tied with the same brush.
You advise people about the law. How much protection is out there so these activities, this illegal activity, can be stamped out?
Well, we'd like to think that if people see these guys or know about these people that are night hawking on a regular basis, possibly that they'd flag it up to the authorities and the police. The problem is they're doing it late at night when everybody's tucked away in bed. The farmers and the landowners don't necessarily see these people, so it's a very difficult job to police this activity. But as I said earlier, it's only, in our view, a tiny minority of people that are letting the hobby down. And we know for a fact that the wonderful work of the detectorists, bringing all these wonderful finds, coins and artefacts to light that we see coming up in museums, on the national news, on the press, local press as well, it's only because of the work of the detectorists that we're actually seeing these things uncovered. Now, the gentleman from who was on earlier, spoke about the damage that detectorists do when they're digging down into the layers. Most of our detecting is done on arable land where agricultural machinery has already, done its worst to damage anything that was potentially there in the layers of archaeology. So we're just finding things that are listed on the surface. So there's a common misconception out there that we're doing a lot of damage. Like I said, 99% of the detectorists out there are doing wonderful work, and, let's hope it continues.
Remind us, though, those people who do break the law and do find something and try to sell it, they can have, fairly severe sentences passed against them. There was one last year involving Viking treasure.
There was. I mean, these were really unfortunate circumstances. These guys had found something really valuable, historical value, and they decided, rather than hand it in to the authorities and go through the proper procedure of the Treasure Act, that they would keep the coins back and sell them on the black market. And of course, somebody somewhere did the right thing, reported these guys for doing it, and they got jailed. I think 3 or 4 of them got really heavy jail sentences. So, if there's anybody out there listening that thinks they're going to squander or squirrel away coins and artefacts that should be handed in as treasure items, then the penalties are severe.
Why do you think people still do it? I know you've told us that it is a tiny minority, but nevertheless, there are people who aren't proper metal detectorists who think, those fields are paved with gold somewhere, so they'll pick up a detector and have a go.
Absolutely. I mean, these guys are it's all to do with education. They need educating on the rules. The hobby of detecting is a harmless hobby. I've been doing it for the best part of 40 years, ever since I was a child. It's took me thousands and thousands of hours trailing up and down fields to even find something that's remotely classed as treasure. So the chances of getting a detector and running off into the night with it thinking you're going to find gold and silver, then the reality is it isn't going to happen anytime soon. It's all about educating these people to know that there's not anything in this country that would support people doing that activity. It's completely wrong, and it ties us, people like myself and others, enthusiasts, with the same brush as them.
Graham, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. That's Graham Rushton, whose business Unearthed UK organises digs, sells metal detectors and advises people on the law after English Heritage warned that illegal detecting is robbing us of our past.